Welcome to the VOD of the Tech Girl Talks live episode that I do on Twitch every Wednesday at 1 p.m. SAST. There's a link to that in the description. So if you want to watch the live conversation, ask questions and things like that, make sure that you hit the follow button on Twitch. But otherwise, I upload the VOD right here every Friday, which is what you're watching right now. For this particular episode, we decided to talk about what makes a good sponsorship for esports teams, players, and events, as well as look at some dodgy sponsorships as well. So enjoy. So today we're going to be focusing specifically on esports sponsorships, looking at events, teams, and players. I want to look at a few examples of what makes a good sponsorship. And then part of the question and the topic was to also focus on bad sponsorships, but I'm going to be dead honest with you. I don't really want to sit here and shit on other people and point things out. So we're going to be avoiding the negativity. I'm just going to be focusing on some good examples. And the biggest thing that I do want to put forward before we begin, and this is really important, everything here is my opinion. I'm not always right. I'm by no means the authority on this one. So these are simply my opinions. I'm going to give you some examples. If you disagree, that's completely okay. You can drop it in the chat. You can let me know. Obviously, if you disagree, let's have an adult conversation. You don't need to tell me that I'm a complete idiot and shout at me. Just tell me why you disagree. And of course, I want to encourage you as well. If you have some cool examples that you think fit into what we're talking about, drop them in there as well. And remember, if you're watching this live on Twitch, you can submit your questions by using !join and then write your question. I answer them at the end of the chat for Q&A. So one more time, !join and then write your question. Otherwise, I can't always keep up with the chat specifically. You got me? Cool. Okay, so let's start out. So what makes a good sponsorship, right? And this is a difficult one because for a brand, I'm going to keep it super simple, straight up. For a brand, a good sponsorship equals them selling more products. Because at the end of the day, that's what brands do. They sell stuff. So if they have a sponsorship that leads to them selling more products, that's a successful sponsorship. That's the kind of the simple one, right? That's the simple short version is good sponsorship equals more money. But there is a bit of a longer version, okay? And that includes the idea of a strategic partnership that's maybe going to improve your public image in the target audience you're looking for. Maybe you want to reach more people to find out about your product or your service. Maybe you want to increase credibility in a specific niche audience, or you want to build trust in the community. That's how that all works. So that's specifically why a lot of brands will get involved in esports, because we are talking about esports. So I'm going to keep it esports focused, is because they want to build credibility. They want to potentially build trust in the community, and by getting involved in that passion that gamers have in competitive gaming, that's a cool way for them to do it. And the short part of this is that long-term sponsorships tend to work better in this space. So we see lots of things where people will sponsor someone for 3 months, or they'll sponsor them, give them some money to promote a specific product in a line and then move on. But those long-term sponsorships tend to work better, and all my examples are going to be of long-term sponsorships that you're going to have a chance to see. For a team or an event or a player, which I'm going to break down, a sponsorship ultimately gives you monetary value, so you get paid to keep doing what you're doing, whether it be creating content, playing games, sending teams all around the country to play. That's the short version. Sponsorship equals money. Money equals the chance to be able to do the stuff you want to do, right? There is a longer version though. So a sponsorship allows you to obviously do more things, but it also allows you to create some value for your audience. So a good sponsorship allows you to, maybe if you're getting sponsored for an event, to run that event. You maybe wouldn't be able to do it without that sponsorship, or maybe with the sponsorship you can do more with the event, so like videos and cool stuff like that. And it also, more importantly, creates that value for your audience and builds your own credibility. And this is the big thing. So a lot of people realize if you're sponsored with a really well-known brand, sometimes that benefits you more than the brand. So yeah, maybe you'll sell some products, but also being linked to a very specific brand immediately entails what you fit and what your style is and things like that. So that's one of the things when it comes to looking for why you would want to sponsor as an event or a team or a player. Got me? I think I've broken this pretty much down into what it looks like. So that should pretty much explain what a good sponsorship is. You need to dive a little bit more in, right? Because a good sponsorship is not just about money. So like if a condom brand came to you tomorrow and was like, cool, I'm going to sponsor you, Is it going to help you build credibility? I mean, the money is cool, but can you create content if you're running an event, like an esports event? Is a condom company going to work? Is that something that you want to be aligned with? Those are all questions that you need to start asking, right? Those are things that are going to come up. So I think what we're going to do is the best way for me to explain this, because I can sit down and I can talk for hours about brands, matching brands and whatnot. What I actually want to do is look at some examples of good sponsorships. Maybe you have some suggestions as well, and you can drop them in the chat and we can kind of break those down as to why those are specifically good sponsorships, right? That's what I'm hoping to do. And from there, we can keep the conversation going. Don't forget, if you enjoy these Tech Girl Talks, I would really love it if you could hit the follow button if you have some extra cash to spend, the sub button as well to show some love. It actually takes me a lot of time to put these together. I did not realize what I'd committed to when I started this, so I'd appreciate a little bit of love. And of course, if you can't stick around for the whole stream, I do post the VOD to YouTube, and I'm probably going to do it to Facebook as well every Friday, so you can watch it there. Nice and easy. Got it? Cool. Thanks for the follows. I will do those big thank yous to everyone at the end. I just want to jump in here and get going. So, to start us out, let's take a look at what I consider to be a good sponsorship for a team. Okay, so we're focusing on teams. That's what we're going to be focusing on first. This is what I would consider a really good sponsorship for a team. And I'm going to give you the example first. I don't know why the dead sound is playing, but there you go. So there you go. There's my first example of a good sponsorship, and we are specifically focusing on, if you couldn't tell from the video, teams first, right? So we're going into teams, and I mean, I'm pretty sure some of you might have been able to guess exactly who I was talking about, because I see you all in the chat dropping those things. Hashtag bring the bravado. There it is. That was specifically what I wanted to talk about, because for me, this was a great example of what a good team partner. Do you know I get paid to talk for a living? Can you believe it? That was what I thought would be a really good example of a great team sponsorship. Just a quick heads up, if you're watching this and you're not from South Africa, I am using South African examples, and the reason that I'm using South African examples is purely just because at the end of the day, I feel like a lot of the other sponsorship examples have been done to death. Like there's a DHL event sponsorship that's just been like, it's used in every case study. And there's the really cool Marvel partnership with Liquid. So I was like, you know what, let's just focus on some different stuff because I think that will be fun. So that's what we're going to be doing. Don't forget !join and then write your question if you have any questions, and I'll definitely answer them. If you want to ask any questions about sponsorship, or if you have a topic suggestion, do that. So let's talk about why this is a good team sponsorship. I feel like a teacher because I want to ask you questions, but I won't do that. So let me break this down really simply for you. You saw there, we were talking about a South African organization called Bravado Gaming, and I used the Dell Alienware sponsorship as an example of what a good team sponsorship looks like. So Alienware's tagline. Actually, before we get into Alienware's tagline, let's talk about Bravado Gaming. So Bravado Gaming is one of South Africa's oldest and most successful teams. They have been around in South Africa for years. Pioneers, more than likely, jumping in this, really professionalizing it. One of the first MGOs to get active on social media and showcase how you can use the internet to promote your brand, and how there were other income streams available, not just winning tournaments and being at LAN. They've also broken barriers. As you know, they were able to do Project Destiny, send CSGO players overseas. Some of those players ended up getting signed to Cloud9, now playing with Extra Salt. So they really broke barriers, did incredibly well in competition over there, and they've generally led the scene and innovated for a very, very long time. So they are, that Bravado star is kind of synonymous with like top tier esports in South Africa, right? So that's Bravado. But then if you take a look at Alienware, Dell Alienware, their tagline is specifically industry leading innovators. And I kind of feel like when I say this is a good team sponsorship, it's right there. When I just said that, like it's completely in the name. I said Bravado, innovating, leading, breaking barriers. You know, that's what they've done. And then Alienware's tagline is industry leading innovators. So why is this a good sponsorship? Well, the brands kind of have the same vibe going on. Obviously, it gets a little bit more in detail. Alienware sells gaming PCs. Bravado is a gaming house. We want to sell gaming PCs. You sell them to gamers. You want to sell high-end gaming equipment. You're going to sell it to high-end competitive gamers, because someone who's super serious about Counter-Strike is more than likely going to spend far more money on a PC and a screen than someone who's just playing casually, you know, some Warcraft for fun, whatever. But that's a bit more diving deep. But I think it's a good sponsorship purely because both brands, their goals and their visions for how they promote themselves kind of align. They're the same thing, right? So it makes sense. There's another reason why this pairing makes sense, and I'll get into that. But their brands basically align, and very conveniently, I actually don't think this was planned, but they do have similar brand colors as well. The blues, whites, and blacks. I don't think that was planned. I think that was just by chance. But the actual like vision of the brands align. That's why that would be a good partnership. You kind of want to partner with a brand that has your vibe going, right? That kind of is pushing the same message you're pushing. Because if you're a team, maybe you're a team that is focused purely on introducing new people to esports. That's kind of your vibe, you know, and you're more like sort of breaking barriers in the sense that you want to get more people involved, and you're more interested in getting more people playing competitive gaming than maybe what you are in winning. You'd want to find a brand that's more welcoming to that, and that makes a good partnership. Am I making sense? Because the chat is very quiet, and that is concerning. So I just want to know if this is making sense as to why I would say this is a good partnership. The other reason that I'm saying it's a good partnership is purely because of how long the Bravado Gaming Alienware partnership has lasted. Currently, right now, it's been more than 11 years. So Alienware and Dell were involved with Bravado before esports was even really a big thing here, which is kind of mental when you think about it. So they were jumping in. They were being super involved in this way back in the beginning. And I think that also makes sure that it becomes a really good partnership, is because of the amount of time they've been together. Those two are literally synonymous. I can't imagine one without the other. And you can see in the chat, RoboHobo's just mentioned, from this Alienware partnership, he got his first Alienware PC in 2010. That's 11 years ago when he was playing Call of Duty for Bravado Gaming, which is completely insane when you think about it. And I think that those two have become so synonymous, and that's why it's a good partnership, because I can't imagine Bravado Gaming without that Alienware logo on their shirts. I can't imagine any other brand being partnered with Alienware. It just wouldn't fit well. So they've become so entwined with one another in the region that they operate in, which is Southern Africa. All the BVD players compete on Alienware machines. When BVD started expanding and they had their different venues, you saw the Alienware machines were kitted out. And Alienware regularly features in all the BVD players in their press releases, showcasing their products. I can actually show you something kind of cool. I've just deleted it because, of course, I did that. But let me just quickly do a quick search here for you, because I want to show you something that I think is really cool and why I think this is also a good partnership. So obviously BVD, Bravado will tag Alienware in all their social posts and things like that. You see them, their players will play with Alienware gear. They're regularly spotted in when they're at events and stuff, you can see the Alienware, but there's something else that they do which is pretty cool. So I'm going to show you, because I've actually just opened it up here on the screen. So this is the Bravado Gaming YouTube. It's just an example. So on Twitter and stuff, they're tagging Alienware. You see all that Alienware, but look how clever this is. So one, the color thing, which I think was kind of by chance, but you can see all of their various content that they're putting out, and every so often you'll see like their first impressions unboxing the Alienware, and you can see Neymar, one of the best Fortnite players in the country, is there with Andreas sent from Bravado. They throw this content in. There's another one here which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is that Alien versus Predator thing, which I'd love to touch on because I think it's cool. But you can see that they regularly drop Alienware content in and amongst the other content that they're doing, which I think is really great. And they're very clever at making sure Alienware is noticed. So you saw the link, the video that I showed earlier. They never once said the words Alienware, and they never once threw the logo at you, but you saw the laptop and the PC and the headset, and it's really well placed, which is why I think that this is also a really good sponsorship to use as an example for a good team sponsorship, is how they're able to kind of complement the brand in the way that they do things. And I think that that's really clever. And that works really well. The other reason that I kind of wanted to chat about them is because they do some really clever stuff. And this is good team sponsorship for me. And I'm now going to pull into Predator a little bit with Goliath Gaming. So at Rage last year, it was all online. And you saw me, I actually showed the video there where obviously Alienware, Dull, and then Acer Gaming, who sponsors Acer's gaming division is called Predator Gaming. They sponsor Goliath Gaming. So Goliath and Bravado did a competition between the two MGOs at Rage, and they called it Alien versus Predator. And they used all the imagery that you would expect with Alien versus Predator. And I thought it was such a clever way to play into the brands, but also play with the MGOs and sort of compete against one another, which is why I think this is just such a great example of a good team synergy and partnership. And like I showed you with their YouTube channel, there's a lot of Alienware reviews. You saw them sharing all the different, in the teaser video, the prominent Alienware brand sits and how BVD pushes it, and their goals, aspirations, and this is the most important, what makes a good sponsorship, which was the original topic of this conversation, and their goals, aspirations, and identities align, so this works. That's my first example. If you have a question or you know what to do, !join, type your question in. I'll answer these all at the end of the live chat. I've seen one question already. I'd love more. If you have examples of sponsorships that you think are good, drop them in the chat. I'll try and mention them as well. And of course, we're going to move on. But if there is a specific topic that you would love me to comment on, if there's a topic that you'd love me to chat about, just drop it in the channel. I can talk about events. So I know a lot of people were interested in me potentially doing a conversation around some tournaments coming up. So I'm happy to break those down as well if you want to do that. If you want me to ask those questions, !join and then write your question straight afterwards. We're going to move on now to what I think would be pretty interesting, because we're going to look at event sponsorships. So these are specifically for esports events, competitions that happen. This is an example that I think is really good. Full disclosure, I did work this event. So I want to be fair here. I worked this event, so maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I thought this was a really good one. So let's take a look at this. Stage 1 of the Toyota Esports Challenge saw professional sim racers, and yes, the Toyota Gazoo rally drivers, and well-known celebrity faces battling it out over 4 weeks for points on the board and the chance to qualify for stage number 2. As the second part of the competition commenced, South Africa's best online rally racers put their foot down to show what they were made of. The final began with a fiercely competitive PC race, with young racing enthusiast Cohen Logic Addiction Sassman going in as favourite after blisteringly fast times in game. He actually found himself a place on the world leaderboards. Each final saw racers compete on 2 different tracks, a longer, more open race in Cyber Finland, followed by a tighter and quicker track in Kenya. Logic Addiction claimed the first day after he ran 2 near flawless races. The young racer, who actually hails from a real rally driving family, says this is only the beginning of his racing journey. That was flawless.
Went in there not expecting too much, and Yeah, I was pretty satisfied with the results.
So sure.
The Xbox players took to the track next, with Priyesh Justapri Kisan claiming the grand prize. Justapri ran a steady race, with his competitor actually losing out after crossing the line because of penalties following a very impressive flip on the road.
I think Dapri might not take the win over the line. It will be Justin's cross first.
But that time penalty, Justin, that's what hits him there. It's like we said.
Halfway through the final stages, the PlayStation drivers raced, with previous Toyota Esports Challenge FIFA runner-up Riyasat Abrams on the starting grid, as well as popular motoring journalist Zero to Turbo. Sim racing enthusiast Ryan Berry's Barrington Smith eventually clinched victory after 2 incredibly fast times made him impossible to catch.
It looked like you'd put a lot of thought into exactly how you wanted to race these races.
When it came to the finals, I just knew that I had to pump in the time. So I probably put in 4 hours a day.
The final race pitted the top 4 sim racers against one another in a battle like no other. Jason Absmere and Charles Wilkin were clearly both out to cross that finish line first. They mirrored one another throughout, pushing each other to go faster and make tighter turns in what can only be described as a heartbreaking finish. After weeks of improving his times, Jason lost out on that #1 podium finish by less than 2 seconds, making Charles Wilkin your Toyota Esports Challenge WRC9 Sim Racing Champion.
Mr. Charles Wilkin, 15,000 Rand in your pocket and the title of Toyota Esports Challenge Champion. Tell me, in that second game, in the second race, did you know how close it was between you and Jason?
Oh yes, you see the split times all the time, and you every now and again browse up and have a look at if he's not ahead or behind. It was incredibly close.
I mean, it must still be good to be able to come out here and show people who's boss. I mean, you have been a name that people have seen in the field for a long time. Is there still a lot of gas left in that petrol tank? You still going to keep going for a while?
Yeah, look, it's something that when I stopped rallying, it's something that kept me going, and you know, I love driving, and it's like at least I can still have a steering wheel in my hand, and you know, it's something I really enjoy. And to be honest, it's super competitive, whether you're racing or rallying, and a lot of fun.
The last few weeks have seen drivers and gamers from South Africa travel around the world and enjoy the thrill of virtual rally racing through WRC9. The community has had a taste of something great, and Toyota has definitely revved their engines. They want to be faster and they want to race more. The start of competitive online rally racing has only just begun.
So there you go. That's my example of what I rate a good event sponsorship looks like. And I'm going to break down exactly why I think that is a good example. So there's a couple of reasons. The most important thing is Toyota wants to sell cars, right? That's what they do. They sell cars. So it makes sense to take a look and go, how do we get more people loyal to the brand? How do we build brand credibility in a market that could potentially spend? And how do we hit them where they would feel excited? Obviously, the Toyota Gazoo rally racing team is famous worldwide. That's the first thing. So there's a really nice thing here where you've got the cars. That's what you want to sell ultimately. And not necessarily when you sponsor an event. I think it's important for people to understand that brands don't necessarily sponsor an event because they want to sell a car there and then. They're sponsoring the event to build brand loyalty and credibility so that when the time comes that you want to buy a car, and it could be next month or it could be in 3 years, Toyota is kind of where you want to go, just because there's like a weird subconscious bias towards them because of this. So going online, choosing to sponsor a sim racing event, and specifically WRC9, which is a rally game tournament, where every competitor, so everyone who entered, whether you were one of the celebs, one of the pro drivers, someone entering online, had to compete in a Toyota Yaris, starts to make sense, right? Understanding why this is a good sponsorship. It allowed the brand to enter the competitive space while still showcasing their product strengths and not necessarily moving away. So credibility can come from, and I'm going to go back to the condom example because it's funny. A condom brand could sponsor a FIFA tournament. They actually can't. It's in the terms and service of EA with regards to esports sponsorships, but we're not going to get into that. But a condom brand could come in and they could sponsor a FIFA tournament. And maybe you'll see the Trojan brand, and it'll kind of give you a subconscious bias when you go to the shops, and you'll still buy Trojan because of that. It'll be the brand that you kind of focus on because you remember that. So the sponsorship has worked. But when you're a car brand trying to sell cars, sponsoring a car event, you understand why that sponsorship can be even better. So I'm not saying that you can't go off to the condom brand and a condom brand sponsoring event couldn't be awesome. I'm just saying that there's far more opportunity to input your messaging as a brand into this event, which is exactly what Toyota was able to do with the Toyota Esports Challenge when they specifically focused on racing. Making sense? You got me? So that for me was a really good one. It was nice, it was straightforward, and it appeals to their current audience as well. So this was really clever for me. They gave added value to their current audience, which were motoring enthusiasts and rally racing fans, by giving them online stuff to watch, possibly introducing them to gaming and esports, which was new. But by doing that, giving their fans a little bit more insight into that, giving them content during lockdown so they could keep entertained. And they were also able to target the sim racing and gaming fans who could enter the competition or watch the racing. So it's a really great way to bridge the gap. They were able to supply content to their existing base, were able to target a new base, build credibility, build brand loyalty. And that's why that's a good event sponsorship. For the people running the tournament, obviously, and UGC actually mentioned it in the chat, when you get budget, you can do more cool things. You can make the prize pool bigger. You can create a lot of content. All of that costs money. So I think that there's like a misunderstanding sometimes with event sponsorships. Just because a brand plugs their logo on the front of an event, that money isn't just going into the pockets of someone. It's paying for the content. It's creating the cool events. It's creating an experience. It's not just an online competition. So that's kind of what you want with an event sponsorship. So a good event sponsorship gives value to the brand, like what you saw with Toyota, where potentially could sell more products in the long run, builds credibility, creates content for existing audience. That is easy to move over, because if Toyota was sponsoring a League of Legends tournament, mark my words, the majority of people who are engaging with the Toyota brand online is not going to go watch League of Legends. It's going to be completely foreign and alien to them. Whereas when they could see the rally racing, it was something that they knew. That's why they were engaging with Toyota. That's why they were engaging with the Toyota Gazoo rally racing team. They love rally racing. They love the Toyota brand. So when they see that online, it's something that it's new, but at the same time, it's familiar. Whereas League of Legends is kind of like, what is that? What? So you understand why that's a good sponsorship. And then obviously for the players, it gave them, any sim racer had an opportunity to win money. So there was a bonus there. But that for me is a really good example of an event sponsorship that works really well. If you have an example, I'd love you to put it in the chat. I'd love to hear about it, get some ideas of what you're thinking. Another good example of this is the ATK Mercedes-Benz sponsorship specifically for ACC, which is a sim racing game as well, where you can drive in Mercedes. I like this car sim racing sponsorships to use as a good example of how to promote the brand. And I think that these are really good examples of why these work. Remembering, though, that you want to keep the brand, the idea of the brand and what the brand's messaging is front of mind and focus on that. So even though it makes sense for a peripheral brand to sponsor an event, the event kind of has to line up with what the peripheral brand is focusing on. So if it is like a super fun casual tournament, maybe you want to go with a more entry-level peripheral brand, it would focus for them better. That would be a good sponsorship. If it's like the super premium, big flashing lights event, then I think it would work out really well if you had maybe a more premium brand. Those are sort of the things that you need to keep in mind. The chat is very quiet today. It is making me super freaked out. This is only my second episode. So please, if you're getting any benefit from this, I would love it if you could tell me, because it would probably make me feel a little bit better, because right now there's no questions coming in and I'm starting to stress that maybe I've gone completely off the mark with this one. Also, if you have any topics that you want me to chat about, I'd love it if you could share, because I'm kind of at a dead end for next week. I do have a poll going, so we could probably start the poll and take a look. There were some topics that people suggested a couple of weeks ago. So I'll give you some examples. So they were, the first one, so vote 1, was why is the ZA fighting games community divided? The second one was the legal landscape in esports and gaming in South Africa. The third was the ROG Medal State Rainbow Six tournament. The fourth was the Apple Epic battle. And then the final one was a Technical Talks on how do you research on players' teams to question, interview them. I'm going to put those things here now just to make life a little bit easier for you, and then I'm going to open the poll so you can vote. and we can see, of course I can't. Now I've got to do the little typing. Mario, if you can put that in the questions, I did see it, but remember !join and then write the question and I'll definitely answer it. I'm just going to quickly write this out so that you know how to vote. And then, oh, that's not what I wanted to do, but there you go. My bad. So I'm going to open the poll. The poll is now open. So 1 is, why is the ZA fighting games community divided? 2, and I'll explain how to do it, is the legal landscape in esports in ZA. 3 is the ROG medal states. Sorry guys, now I'm having to do this tournament. 4 is the Apple Epic Battle. And then 5 is how do you research teams. Okay, I'm going to copy all of this so that we can... Okay, so there's the numbers so that you know. The poll is now open. So in order to vote, !vote, and then just whichever number it is that you want to vote for. So maybe it could be the fighting games one. Brandy's got it on points, but there you go. So just let me know and we'll take a look at that as we go. And don't forget, if you have questions, I see Mario's put it in. I'll do the question and answers at the end of this. !join, write your question, and we can get straight into it. There's a tie already for fighting games and ROG medal states. So at the end of this, we'll decide which route we're going to be going with. But now I'm going to jump into a new one for me. So it is, I'm going to chat. We've done event sponsorship and we've done team sponsorship. But now I want to talk about player sponsorship. And to the best of my ability, to the best of my knowledge, this is the only individual player sponsorship in South Africa right now, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken. I'm not always right. But let's take a look. It's your boy, yes, YvngSavage. That, of course, was the big one that came out last year, and I'm sure you'll remember it. And it was, of course, when we got to hear that Thabo YvngSavage Moloi would be the first Red Bull sponsored esports athlete in South Africa. So let's break this down as to why I think this is a fantastic sponsorship. So the first thing is that it is long term. This is my big thing for me. I don't think sponsorships work when they're short. I don't think it should be once-offs. I think that you have to commit to a long-term sponsorship to build brand credibility and awareness, and also make sure that the team or the event or the player can build on that as well. The reason this is great for me is because the first thing is YvngSavage has this incredible rags to riches story that continues to develop. So he didn't have a great season. He didn't have a great year this year, but he still finished 3rd or 4th. He was just off the leaders, and he was able to go into that story and explain. He went from just jumping in, and just to quickly answer Iggy's question, quantify as long term. I think anything more than 6 months. 6 months to a year, definitely. I think a year is the best way to judge if a sponsorship is working. I think when you do like a 2-month, I've seen brands that do this like quarter thing. So they sponsor for a quarter. It's like 3 months. You can't build loyalty in 3 months. It takes years to build a community. It takes years for that community to trust you. They ain't going to just jump in 3 months. Influencer campaigns are different. That's a whole different topic. Long-term sponsorships, I think, need to be 6 months to a year. So with YvngSavage, the story and the journey of his is really where I think the value lies, and why I think this is such a good example of a player sponsorship. He faced a lot of challenges. Everyone knows the story. He came from nowhere. No one had ever heard of him. He was borrowing the game because he didn't even have the game. Borrowed the game, went into a competition, won the biggest prize pool ever seen in South Africa. 400,000 Rand in his pocket. Poof, famous everywhere. Everyone's talking about YvngSavage, right? And then he went on and he had like a couple of things where it was difficult, but he was going to go overseas, and it was huge, and everyone was focusing on him, and he was winning lots of stuff. And then he had this moment where things weren't going that well, and things started going down a little bit, and he was struggling a little bit, and his dad passed away, which I spoke candidly with him, so I can talk about this because I wrote an article about it, and suddenly he was coming like third or fourth, and that became really difficult. But throughout all of this, Red Bull was still there, and that's why this is such a cool story, because he is still one of the best players. Even if he isn't winning, he's still up there at the top. He was winning. Hopefully he comes back to winning. But the real, I think, the value here is specifically the journey and the story of YvngSavage. For any gamers facing challenges or feeling like they need more money or eyeballs, Thabo is that inspiration. But for Red Bull as well, they've always had this like alternative. Think about the brand. Like Red Bull's just cool, right? They find the most random stuff. They showcase all this new talent. They're constantly just pushing the boundaries. They do crazy stuff. They're the trailblazers, right? Like if someone says it can't be done, Red Bull's going to go out and fly a man and make him jump, and he's going to look at Earth, and that's going to be their thing, you know? Like that's what Red Bull does. So that's why Thabo's story is so cool, because Thabo was that guy. He didn't have the game, man. He went to a tournament. No one knew who he was, and he won 400,000. Like that's... His story is so cool. He's coming from South Africa, from a relatively poor background, and he's just doing his thing, and he's turning esports into this way for him to support his family, which is unheard of here. All those things, that's what Red Bull does, right? So there's that incredible partnership that works for me. The brands are aligned. Also, important to keep in mind, I understand that Red Bull's job is to sell cans. Like they want to sell energy drinks. That's their thing, right? So that's kind of where their focus is, but they've also become one of the most powerful media houses on the planet, in terms of creating content, in terms of creating valuable content that people enjoy and engage with. They've got Red Bull TV, they've got their website, they've got all of that. So by sponsoring YvngSavage, they get access to that entire story, which creates content for years to come, engaging content that people want to watch. It's super interesting, whether you're watching in South Africa or the rest of the world. So the partnership starts to make sense. Those are my examples of good sponsorships. Those are what I think are really great examples of what a good sponsorship in esports looks like. I know there's a bunch of questions and I'll answer them. One of the things that I did not want to talk about was the bad stuff, and I'm not going to highlight bad sponsorships, but part of the question that came last week where this became a topic was specifically on how do you spot a dodgy sponsorship, because this is something that comes up all the time. And before we do that, Brandy just mentioned there about how Red Bull does really great things in the gaming community, and that's the thing. They've found a way to authentically enter the space. Obviously, promoting yourself in the space, finding authentic ways to sponsor someone like YvngSavage, to run, hit the streets. They're basically fighting games is blown up because of that. So Red Bull's found a really unique way to enter esports and do their sponsorships, and it's such a good example of finding a way to create credibility and to create eyeballs on content, and find a way to grow in the scene. And you know that most gamers, especially the pros, when they go to a store, if they can choose between Red Bull and the other energy drink, they're going for Red Bull because they feel loyal. And that's something that's a really good example. But I actually wanted to use Hit the Streets as my events example, but then I was like, it's too much Red Bull. And if you're watching the stream, you know that I write for Red Bull's gaming site, so I felt like it would be a little bit too biased. So I used the Toyota example, but I think Red Bull's a really good example of how to make sponsorships work as well. I understand that some of you want me to go in and slate a bunch of sponsorships. I'm not going to do that, but I am going to show you how to spot a dodgy sponsorship. Okay, so there are sponsorships that are just not good. And I'm going to use myself as an example because I have such a great example for this. And here's the thing, okay. Remember what I said right at the start about sponsorships is trying to understand what works for your brand, and finding ways to align. And I am going to get into some of the scams here, Brandy, as well. And I'm going to show you, though, a really good example of how to get it so incredibly wrong. Okay. Money's cool. And I mentioned this at the start. So it's cool. The brand pays you money and you get some money and you can create content. And then the brand is paying you money because they want you to promote their products and ultimately sell it. So take a look at this. Okay, let's go. I'm going to show you some products. The first one is what is called the Turf Chopper. And you'll see that the tagline there is never nip your sack again. And it says, grab life by the balls today. The Turf Chopper comes with a built-in battery that is chargeable by USB lead. It can also be used wireless. That's one example of a product. Here's another one. The Hedge Clippers. Never feel undergroomed again. Okay? And I just want to point out the whole way through while I'm doing this, the brand here is called Smooth My Balls. So this is specifically focused on male grooming. The final one, the Pube Muncher. Never clog your sink again. This is the product. This was the request. Looked over your profile. I got this message from Smooth My Balls. Looked over your profile. Seems like you are a great match. I work with Smooth My Balls and they are interested in working together. Let us discuss why this is a bad sponsorship. Point 1, I don't have balls. So I cannot talk about grooming said balls because I don't have them. Okay, number 1. Number 2, I specifically am an esports shoutcaster and I commentate on video games. There is nothing there that I can find to create content around games. That's not a great sponsorship. It's a terrible idea. We're not a good match at all. And there's no way that that would work. So I could have said yes. And I could have taken their money. And I could have sent out some tweets or put an ad here in the stream and been like, Smooth My Balls, go buy their stuff. And you would have been like, that's weird. I would have been like, that's weird. It wouldn't have given the brand credibility. It would have made me look like a fool. And they probably wouldn't have sold any products. Maybe they would have. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to judge you guys if you went. But that's not a brand that works. And those are some of the things you need to be careful of because it's easy to get excited about cash. But you need to remember that sometimes cash is not king and you need to consider how this would affect you and what it would look like. Another thing that I see all the time. Now, I didn't want to... I've got some examples of this, but they're not mine. They were sent to me by someone else. So I don't feel like it's appropriate to share their private conversations. But... Edge, how appropriate would Smooth My Balls be in my Minecraft? Yes, exactly. Now I want to talk about the dodgy sponsorships you need to watch out. This is great for esports teams, for events, for content creators. Is a lot of brands will reach out to smaller creators offering sponsorships and ambassadorships. They say it. We want to sponsor you or we want you to be a brand ambassador for commission. So what does that mean? It means they say, tell you what, we're going to give you a code, a discount code, and not a discount code, sorry, we're going to give you a creator code. And any item you sell, you get a percentage of that sale. And you get to be our ambassador. That is not a sponsorship, and that is not a brand ambassadorship. You are a salesman or woman. That's what you're doing. You are a salesman and a saleswoman. There is no mutual, there's a money transaction, but there's no money coming from them. There's the brand, other than the code giving you a percentage, is giving you nothing. They're just making you sell their product. And if you want to make money, that's cool, but don't then call yourself a brand ambassador or call it a sponsorship. It's not. You are simply selling their product for a discount code or a code for yourself. Also, and this is another thing, and I had an example of this, but I kind of don't want to show it because I think it's a bit inappropriate, was that someone got a mail from a clothing brand who said, we want you to be our brand ambassador. So we're going to give you 20% off. You're going to go on the site and you're going to buy whatever you want clothes-wise, and we're going to give you 20% off. Okay? Boom, boom. Also, once you've bought that, so you'll get your 20% off. Then we're going to give you this code and you're going to sell these, you're going to tell your followers to buy these clothes and then we'll give you a percentage. That is not a sponsorship. You are not a brand ambassador. If you are having to spend your own money to buy the product that you need to sell, you are not a 20% discount, whatever. You are not the brand ambassador and you are definitely not the sponsor. It's not. So don't take those deals. You are signing your soul away for nothing. And also they'll offer you 1 or 2 items in a discount code. But when they want you to say I'm a brand ambassador, you are definitely not. These are not good sponsorship deals. Of course you can do them. If you want to sell stuff, you sell stuff. But don't sell your team or your events or your player as an ambassador when you're being asked to really be a salesperson. And also remember, I think this is most important, is everything in writing, no matter what. Your return and theirs needs to be on paper. And I see that there's some mentions here about some of the dodgy links that you get to see on YouTube. You need to be really careful of all of that stuff. So those are more of the dodgy sponsorships. It's the same as when people are going to, when they're asking you to sell a product or buy a product to be a brand ambassador, that's not it. Also, if they want to sponsor an esports event, I've seen this a million times, we're going to sponsor the esport event, but we're not going to give you any money. We're going to give you a discount code. You're not benefiting. The only person benefiting the only thing benefiting is the brand, because you're going to be, the event is going to be pushing this content out with this code, and they're going to sell stuff, and you gave out a discount code. That's really cool. And this, interestingly enough, from Brandy saying with sponsorships, they wanted YouTube logins from the person. They said that they wanted to be able to reply to comments or remove the video. No. Never give anyone logins, and always focus on making sure everything is in writing no matter what. Like I said, everything needs to be on paper. And that's really important. So there you go. I've broken down some good examples of what I think are good esports sponsorships. And I've also broken down how to watch out for some of the less than decent ones, and some of the dodgy stuff you need to look like. For those of you who are super keen to get involved with Smooth My Balls, that's cool. I'll make that happen. But now we actually get to move to Q&A time. So how this is going to work is I will answer all your questions, and if there were any questions, and if you have any more, you can put them in. It's !join with your question. And you can definitely do that. So let's go into question and answer time. I'm just going to move on to see what these questions are. Don't forget as well to be voting in the poll for what topic I should talk about next week. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, I'm going to go into my queue. I'm going to keep the queue open. So if you have a specific question that you want to ask right now, you can push it in. I just need to skip all the way to the longest question ever. So this is the first one I'm going to do. So it is Ocean's. I hope you're still in the chat. So this is Ocean's question. Similar to how football teams in the UK have branched into esports and have created their own esports team, surely our local clubs should follow suit. Orlando Pirates have done this already with their Ballers partnership, but they seem to be the only club interested in venturing into esports at all. I promise there was a question in here somewhere. What's your opinion on that? Is it financial feasibility hurdles or just a lack of interest? Okay, so actually really interesting question, Ocean. So you're right, Orlando Pirates, what we've seen is, especially overseas, so a lot of sports teams have got involved in esports. Interestingly enough, McLaren has just done a big partnership with Free Fire, the mobile game. We've seen the likes of Manchester City open an esports division. DC United in the States has an esports division. One of our South African players actually lives there and plays for them. But here, Orlando Pirates is kind of the one that we see. They have their esports players, but we don't see a lot of the other teams doing it. Interestingly, though, that you mentioned that Kaiser Chiefs is actually sponsored by Toyota. So part of the Toyota Esports Challenge, the first one they did was FIFA, purely to tie in with that Kaiser Chiefs link. And we now see the South African Football Association getting far more involved in the esports side as well. I don't know why we're not seeing more local football teams, especially in the smaller regions, get involved. I do think it's a financial thing. I think a lot of these teams, Orlando Pirates, Kaiser Chiefs probably have the big money, maybe SuperSport United a little bit, but I think for the most part it is a cash thing. And they're probably also feeling it out. Remember, esports in smaller regions like South Africa, very small player base, very small return on investment. So you want to be a little bit more cautious before you throw your money into it. So I think that's why we haven't seen them yet, Oceans, but I don't know. I'd have to go speak to them. I'm hoping that answers your question. Let me know. I'm going to quickly answer this one because Devon's put it in here and he said, I heard some of your commentary on the Race Face Solidarity 24-hour Kyle Army race. Thank you. My question is basically, how accessible is it to join a team these days, especially on sim racing? So I think it's always difficult. This is a difficult question in terms of joining a team, Devon, is that you have to be at a certain level. You have to get noticed by the team and they ultimately have to have space. And joining a team, while it's cool to be part of a team, ultimately what you want is to ensure that the team brings you certain value. I think that the best place to start if you're interested in sim racing is to go to the Raceface Discord. jump in there. Also RCI International, Racing Club International, which is an overseas racing fraternity. Jump in there, have a chat to them, and they can definitely help you out. But really getting picked up by a team for sim racing, it's all about racing and doing really well. And then approaching those teams. So sending them some content, maybe sending them some examples of you racing, some of your results, your social media, and tell them that you are interested in and looking for sponsorship. Jumping back into the questions, Mario asks, is the international sponsorship supporting South African sponsors? And if not, why not? So, Mario, I don't know if you're still here, but I'm going to try and guess what you're asking. I'm presuming what you're saying is, are the international sponsorship teams supporting the South African sponsors? Meaning, Mario, am I right in saying you're asking if, for example, I'm not going to use Red Bull because they're in the chat. Are you asking if, for example, let's go with Nike. So say, for example, Nike is sponsoring a big esports event overseas. So they actually sponsor some Chinese LOL. So they're sponsoring a League of Legends event. Does that international sponsorship then come here where someone says, right now we want to see a South African League of Legends event? Is that kind of what you're looking for? Does that international sponsorship support the local ones? If you can give me some insight, that would really help me a little bit. So if you can just write a little bit more of an explanation in the chat. While we wait for you though, I'm going to answer Mr. Productions. How do you convince a brand to take a risk on you as a company to sponsor your events or players? Dude, if I knew the answer to that, like legit, if I knew the answer to that, I would bottle it and sell it for huge amounts of money. There's like a very textbook explanation, but I don't think it works. And I do think that this is, unfortunately, there's an understanding of knowing people. So obviously who you know, that is true. Who you know helps a lot. So sometimes you get a sponsor of an event because someone knew someone that they could sort of sell it to, and there's a relationship beforehand. People get upset about that, but I mean, that's business. Sometimes, you put money in and trust in the people that you know. Sometimes, I've seen stuff that I don't understand, like legitimately do not understand why it's happened or how the money's gone there. But it does come down to KV's just mentioned it, networking and the ability to sell yourself and your potential seems like the best way to do it locally. You do have to reach out. You've got to put together those show reels. You've got to mail the brands. You've got to say, this is what we're doing. And I also think this is a big thing that a lot of people miss. And I actually saw a conversation with a local streamer happening with Grant Hines where he was like, well, I want to, who's out there who can sponsor my content? And Grant was like, well, what is your business model? And the streamer was like, well, I stream. And that doesn't work. So I see this a lot as well where someone will, and I think RoboHobo mentioned it higher up, where obviously him working for Red Bull gets these messages all the time, sponsor me a gaming room. I want a gaming room. So with that in mind, I think you need to ask for what you want. So you need to be able to go to a brand with an example of what it is that you want to do for your event. And you need to say, this is what it's going to look like. Here's some examples of what we can do. This is how much it costs, and this is why it costs this much. A lot of the time people, and when you pay this much, this is what you're going to get from giving me that money. I think a lot of the time people go, well, here's an event, would you like to sponsor? And there's nothing more that comes with it. But also sometimes you do that. You do the whole thing, you do the whole breakdown. The brand's like, I don't want to spend that sort of money. So you have to be a little bit more fluid with your event to be able to say, okay, that's what you get for that much, this big shiny show. But I tell you what, we can give you the little, that there's the star, but she has a tiny little piece of glitter, and this is how much the glitter costs. But I do think it's really difficult. I think we live in smaller regions like South Africa, it's really hard as well, purely because there's just not a lot of money to go around as much as people think there is. There's really not. So that can be really difficult. And I'm hoping that answered your question. It wasn't the best answer. But you just got to keep bashing at the door, which is the worst advice ever. And I'm sorry that that's the advice I'm giving you. I'm going to jump back to Mario's question. So Mario says, let's say Nike EU gives Nike South Africa the same products and tells them to promote the same way. Okay, so they don't do this. Mario, all right, so just a little bit of background is I actually used to work at a marketing company before I did esports. So I do have a little bit of insight. I've worked with, I'm not doing this to brag, I'm just giving you some insight into what I've worked with Barclays Bank in the UK. I've worked with Vodacom here. I've done marketing and brand campaigns for nearly every major like consumer product around. This was years ago though, like 5 years ago, but still. The local markets are different. So any brand that goes, this is how we're doing it overseas, do it the same there, normally fails because you need to understand the market. So what a lot of the time we'll do is they'll go, okay, we're launching this product. This is what it's going to look like. The overall marketing is going to look like this. So there'll be a marketing plan internationally, which will be, we're going to use a sneaker because this is the sneaker. This is the selling points of the sneaker. This is how we're going to market said sneaker. That's the global job. That's the basis of the marketing. Then each region will take that and will need to work something around those core principles for their region specifically. Is that making sense? So they'll have to say, okay, cool. This is a cool, so we need to sell this sneaker, but in South Africa, for example, this would work better. And if we did this, and this as a way to promote it, it would probably do better. Also, certain social channels do better in certain regions. Other regions need to do old school press. So it changes that they won't just have a benchmark. This is how we sell. It's also why you'll see certain brands will sponsor esports teams overseas, but then locally they'll be like, we're not going to sponsor those teams because they change. They have to look at where their demographic lies, where their target market lies, and the best way to access them. And sometimes the best way to access someone in Germany is not the same way to access them here, in the same way that accessing someone in India is not necessarily the best way to access them here. So it is a little bit different. The final question that I'm going to answer, unless anyone has more, I've left it open, ! Join with your question. But the final question I was going to ask is, Mario, you did ask what I thought about ATK announcing that they'll no longer be sponsored by Logitech. I can't answer this. I have absolutely no insight. I don't know if there's another brand coming. I don't know what ATK's strategy is. I don't know, believe it or not. I know I'm partnered with Logitech G. I don't know what their strategy is for everyone else. I only deal with them about me. So I can't answer it. I mean, maybe it's because the ATK has another sponsor, but I don't know. So for me to answer, I can't, basically. So yeah, there we go. That was Tech Girl Talks episode 2. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a topic you want me to cover, drop it in the chat, comment on the videos, let me know on my Discord channel, tweet me. I got to figure something out. The VOD for the stream will be live on YouTube on Friday morning, and I will be back next week, Wednesday, with a new topic. Wow, you made the whole way through Tech Girl Talks. Good job. Of course, this was a VOD. It is recorded live every Wednesday on Twitch, twitch.tv/TechGirlZA. Go check it out. And if you have any topics that you want me to chat about, maybe you want me to break something down, it can be esports events, it can be stuff like this, sponsorships, things like that, then let me know on Twitter @TechGirlZA or join my Discord. You can drop your questions and your topic suggestions there as well. There is a link in the description to this video. And if you enjoyed it, please hit that sub button. I'll see you soon.